If you like this episode, please subscribe, share with others, rate and review so we can continue to bring you great programming.
This is The Thing About Cars, a podcast for car enthusiasts and the people who love them.
Forgive me, Mother Misty. It's been 54 years since my last confession, and I have sinned.
Tell me, my son, how have you offended our Lord in heaven?
I have had impure thoughts about getting a Ford, more than one Ford.
My son, I believe at this time we have no choice but to excommunicate you from the society of automobile lovers
But
for
Mother
heinous
Misty,
sins against our Lord.
but it was a really nice Explorer with the twin turbo V6 in it.
The road to hell is paved with the carcasses of F-150s and Explorers.
But then there was another 60s era Mustang soft top convertible and a green thing that made me feel like I'd been climbing the rope in gym class.
I ask that you put aside this weakness of the flesh and become a better person and understand that Fords are not what our Lord has requested from us. The Lord has requested that we focus on quality versus pretty. And just because something has a pretty outside does not mean that it is not filled on the inside with corruption and eternal death.
Mother Misty, they always told me that quality was job one.
Sometimes, my son, these lies are brought in such beautiful packages, and I would be wrong if I were to deny that, yes, the Mustang is as music to one's ears, but is it worth your immortal soul to buy into this obvious fabrication that quality is job one?
I think I'm beginning to understand. What is my penance?
Your penance shall be 10 rounds of 285 during Friday afternoon rush hour traffic.
Holy Hello, this is The Thing About Cars. Thank you and welcome. I'm surrounded. This is Mickey. I'm Mickey, first of all. Let's just get that right out of the way. And around the table, we have good friends, Misty in the Netherlands. How are you, Misty?
Amazingly not moist and about 30 minutes away from turning half of my living room into set dressing for The Shining. All I'm doing is spray painting a feature wall, but it happens to be red, so I have everything taped up so that I can avoid the other half of the living room looking like set dressing from The Shining.
That's hilarious. Ben. And that's Tim. How are you, Tim?
Doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. Ben, how goes it? Long time no see.
It goes pretty damn awesome. How about you?
It's going. It's an early chilly Sunday here in Georgia.
Yeah.
We had temperatures dipping down into the 40s this morning. I didn't know if you guys were aware of that, but
yeah.
But my furnace is supposed to kick in. It's one of those smart things that says, "Oh, it's cold. Let's turn on," and it didn't. So I need to figure that out.
Well, it actually probably was smart because it probably took a look at current energy costs and went, "Yeah, you can just put on an extra pair of socks, dude."
It probably did something exactly like that. Ben and I were at a car show yesterday. Ben entered your Lotus and got some good attention, I think. How'd it go, Ben?
Oh, it was a lot of fun.
It was a fun show.
Yeah, I met some cool people, saw lots of really pretty cars, and yeah, just had a good time all around.
Yeah.
I get so excited when your Lotus gets to go out and meet people and be looked at and, probably oogled and hopefully not fondled too much, unless your Lotus said yes.
Consent is key. Tim, you got trivia for us today?
I do. What's up?
Excellent. Let's do the Grand Trivia Auto thing.
All right. So our question today is about QR codes. The first main use for the QR code system was for the manufacturing of automobiles in which country? Was it the very rule-following Germans, the very clever Japanese, the home of Silicon Valley, good old USA, or those fine, passionate Italians. So Germany, Italy, Japan, or the USA.
I did not know that QR codes were implemented for like industry before anything else.
Before advertising? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting.
Me either. So
Yeah.
Hey, you learn something new every day, which is probably the point of being alive.
that's it.
So I was hoping to have a guest today, this woman over in Slovenia, who does these really cool oil paintings of cars, but connecting with her has just been a challenge. So we'll have to celebrate if she ever actually shows up. She has the address for today, and if she doesn't show up, then she doesn't show up. Anyway, other than that, I thought I had a really cool topic for today, and I can't find my notes. And of course, I forgotten everything. And so
I was just thinking about that connection issue. I mean, we had no issue connecting with my pal Derek in Namibia. You'd think Slovenia would be easier. It's not.
I don't mean it's a technological issue. I think the artist just doesn't check her messages and
that could be, yeah.
And doesn't have the wherewithal to say, yes, I'll be there at 10 a.m. Eastern time.
Got it.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things. But
that could happen. That could happen.
Yeah. And I want to tell you guys like the website and to check out her artwork, but I want her to be here when we do it, right? And then
that would be a whole lot more fun.
Yeah.
Well, I have an interesting thing because yesterday, so lately I've been on the lookout for a loom, a weaving loom that is both wider and capable of doing different things better than my current rigid heddle loom, which would be considered a two-shaft loom. Please don't make any jokes about that. So I've been scouting out
what could we possibly say about a two-shaft loom, Missy?
No clue. Just wait until you hear about the six-shaft one. So I've been kind of scoping out the, kind of the Dutch equivalent, kind of like a Craigslist, and and I found one. Wasn't entirely sure it was complete. Wasn't even sure what brand it was. So, but I looked at it and I was like, there is no way on God's green earth, that this thing will fit in Claudette.
Yeah.
So, and then it wasn't a local one that I could just run out with my hand trucks and get it, because it was all the way up in Zandam, which is about a 45 minute drive from here. So what I did was I was like, okay, I can rent. I'll just rent a car, because the price that they were offering, that they were asking for this loom, even if you threw in the car rental cost, would still be significantly less than what other people are asking for this. So I get up there yesterday and I look at it, and it turns out that the cool thing is the money that I spent on this loom is going to support what they call a city farm in Sandam. And it's a really worthwhile thing. They do a lot of educational stuff. But what I was thinking about, because when I was driving up there, a friend of mine was riding with me, and he's like, because I had a Toyota Aygo X, which is kind of the bigger model of the Toyota Aygo. And it was also a standard transmission. And he was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this car? And I said, like a 4. And he's like, why? I said, first of all, the brakes are too touchy. It's just a bog standard car. It doesn't have any air conditioning, it doesn't have anything like that. And the clutch is really deep, and plus after getting back into Claudette, I was like, also the gearbox feels like it's full of plastic. It just felt really, the only thing I can think of now is the Dutch word. It felt, schlop. It just felt messy. It felt, like really poorly cooked French fries.
Like shifting a wet noodle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, one more time. What car was this, Misty?
It was a Toyota Aygo X.
Right. We're going to have to try to translate to the U.S. market.
So I mean, it was basically, what in Europe is considered a compact, but in the U.S. would probably be considered a subcompact.
Okay.
Although
by the looks of it, I would say it's closest in genealogy to a Yaris.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Although we do have the Yaris here, and I want to say, I might be wrong, but I think the Aygo is a step down from the Yaris.
Dang.
I mean, or I could be wrong. but this was like the X version, so it was slightly bigger, and then my friend asked me, he's like, okay, so, where would you put Claudette on this? And I said, well, she's a 10 because she is the standard that I judge other cars by. And the only reason this Igo got a 4 was because it did actually have a reverse camera. But that's all it had. It didn't have navigation.
Nice.
It didn't have air conditioning. It didn't have, it didn't have the automatic thing that when you hit the button on the window automatically goes all the way down. The clutch, the brakes were like super, super touchy, but the clutch, it's like it was so deep, like you had to like lift forever before it would actually catch and engage. I wasn't expecting Claudette level performance. But the other thing that got me thinking about, because if people have ever missed this, I happen to be ADHD, which comes with its own set of, I don't know how y'all have missed that. But it does come sometimes with its own set of challenges. And one of those is spatial awareness. And I've noticed that for me, it takes a really long time to adjust from one car to another, like to go from Claudette, because I know exactly where everything is in relation to Claudette. I can judge speed without necessarily looking at the speedometer, things like that. And it just takes, for me, what feels like an inordinate amount of time to readjust to another car. And I'm like, is that just a neurospicy thing, or do like you neurotypicals have that problem as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of like muscle memory in any kind of athletic activity where you get, it takes a while to get your that spatial awareness of where everything is and how everything works. And is the right hand stalk the one that has the washer control, or is that the one that has the headlight control? And the little things like that are unique to every car and every auto manufacturer, like the way they like to lay things out.
That's
I'm
funny
being
you
told-
mentioned that.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned the wiper stalk, Tim, because that's the one thing, actually not even the wiper, really the turn signal. That's the one thing I have trouble with going between the Lotus and my regular car, which is a big honking Mazda CX-5. The Lotus has a UK Triumph. The words just escape me. Steering column. I say UK Triumph because this is the steering column that Triumph used in the UK. So it has its turn signal on the right side of the stalk. It has has another stalk on the left side that actually controls headlight beams that can be really confusing to people. But so I have to do turn signals with my right hand when I'm driving the Lotus, and doing those between shifts. I don't. When I get into the Lotus, I never ever have an issue with hitting that headlight beam switch when I want to turn. But after driving the Lotus, it could be 2 days later. I get back in my Mazda and I hit the wiper when I'm about to make a turn.
Right. Yeah.
So, Suzanne has joined us, and Suzanne, no worries. Misty's talking about the cognitive challenge between shifting from driving one car to another, and. Yeah. So, Misty, is it just where the controls are, or is it also like pedal feel and responsiveness and stuff like that?
For me, it's everything. It's also knowing like where my backside is, when I'm reversing, and knowing where, because like with Claudette, I have possibly the luxury, she has the two little, humps, her lady humps, on the front. Giggity. And I mean, by now it's pretty subconscious, but I'm like, okay, if I can see the lines on this side and this side, I'm exactly where I need to be, in my lane. And then I went to this Toyota Igo, which is significantly narrower, and I'm like, I have no idea where I'm at in this lane.
Oh, I feel you. Honestly, part of the decision to stick with Ford, and Misty, I know how you feel about Ford. I know. part of this reason I went from my F-250 to an F-150 was because all the controls are in the same place. It's a Ford. Everything's where it is. Because my husband has a Toyota Land Cruiser, I think a 79 series Toyota Land Cruiser. And I get in that thing and I have to go, okay, I need a flight manual. Where is everything in this car? And it takes me a minute, and it's a stick shift. The most fun I ever had, though, in doing this is when you get into a British car or an African Land Cruiser and the stick shifts on the left.
Mhm.
And
I would probably lose my mind.
that's
Yeah.
always fun to be like, okay.
That's a
I
challenge.
did it once.
Yeah.
I did it once driving a friend's Lotus in Los Angeles, of all places. He had a UK market car that he'd brought with him from England, and it wasn't as difficult as I expected it to be.
Yeah. Well, I know that when my ex originally had the CX-5 that was stolen, and then he moved into as a temporary measure into a BMW. I struggled a whole lot more. I can go between Mazdas, the things are in virtually the same place regardless. I can go from the MX-5 to the CX-5 to the 6, and it's not. Yeah, there's some slight adjustments, of course, because you're going from a roadster to an SUV to a sedan, but brand hopping in between cars for me is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult.
Be glad you don't have my job then. I drive a different car every week, the rental cars I use for my biz trips, and it's so much fun.
I
So,
just
Misty,
shoot
I'm
myself in the face.
Sorry, I have
Misty,
a
I've
quick.
been.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, I'm severely ADD, right? And I've never been until recently, until the psychological and medical community decided that ADD was still on the same spectrum as neurodivergent as everything else. I've never had this problem. I get into one car. It's not much of a cognitive difficult. It's not much cognitively difficult to climb into another car and start driving it. I don't know what makes me different in that regard. But I'll sit there and I'm like, okay, I'll futz with the controls for a second, and then I'm good to go. But
Well, I mean, just like with life in general, it's on a spectrum.
sure,
I have a lot of for me, a lot of sensory stuff. Uh, like one of the biggest, things that will send me almost into, just an absolute rage is someone sitting in the same room and they're listening to something on headsets, but they have it so loud that I can hear it, and it's like just right at this threshold where I can barely hear it, and I'm just like, the wrong texture. It took me years to learn to eat cauliflower because I mean it has that, and trust me, I love aloo gobi more. I love curry dishes with a passion that's probably unhealthy.
you're saying the magic words, Misty. Let's go.
Yes, let's go. But things like like cauliflower. I still struggle eating cornbread. Uh, Grits, trust me, I love grits, but I have to make them because if anybody else makes them, they're too gritty for grits. Wow. And I cannot cope. A lot of times if you see me, if I'm really concentrating, I'll have this one strand of hair and it's going, round and round and round and round. And I know, Mickey, you don't have that luxury. It's okay. And it's less about the repetitive motion than the feel of the hair, but it's a whole sensory processing issue. Like it's really difficult for me sometimes, unless the person is speaking almost accentless Dutch, to be just on a telephone call with someone because, and sometimes telephone calls are difficult in general, regardless of the language, because I miss things. And a lot of times I need those visual cues. It's almost a little bit of lip reading sometimes, and
I understand that.
and I'm the type of person that if I'm driving somewhere I've never been, I have to turn the radio down.
Right, yeah, to get all your cognitive senses or energies focused to that one part.
Yeah.
I was thinking when we were talking about earlier, just like the basic controls, like, if you're sitting in a right-hand drive car, now you've got to shift with your left hand, and that's a different set of motor skills that you might not have honed. I was thinking back to, if you remember the days, well, back in the 80s, and the unintended acceleration lawsuits that came up, and it was targeted mostly around the Audi 5000 car, which almost broke Audi in the U.S. market. They got such a bad rap for it, and part of the the media hype about it was that 60 Minutes did an article on it, and they actually modified an Audi 5000 so that when you pushed on the brake, well, okay, so unintended acceleration, let me back up, is, people would say they pushed on the brake and the car accelerated forward out of control. And the harder they pushed on the brake, the faster the car went. So 60 Minutes actually modified an Audi 5000 to do just that. You pushed on the brake and it didn't stop. And they, in the article, they did a very poor job of explaining that we modified this vehicle so in that no way it ever came out of the Audi factory like this. And what they also never, I think they finally had to eventually go back and apologize, like, we may have misled a few viewers, but et cetera, et cetera. But it came back of not only did people in Audi 5000s have this issue, but the second generation Chevrolet Camaro / Pontiac Firebird had the same issue. And what it came down to is that in your mind's eye, as you sit behind the steering wheel of a car and you go to push on the brake, your foot aims for the spot directly underneath the steering column. And in the Audi pedal box was slightly offset to the left. So if you went for that spot in space, you would actually hit the accelerator and accelerate forward. The other big thing that came up was that when these accidents that happened, I think it was something like 90% of them generally happened to the person who was not that for this vehicle. They were not the primary driver of the vehicle. And to a slight variant of the problem, my dad had this issue in his 1983 Chevy Malibu, where he had parked it in the garage and didn't quite get it as far forward as he wanted. So he, sat in the driver's seat till the door was open, and he had 1 foot on the ground, 1 foot inside the car, and said, okay, I'm just going to, start the car, let it, put it in drive, let it glide forward a little bit, hit the brake and stop. Well, with him not sitting true inside the driver's seat, he was actually hovering his foot over the accelerator and managed to put a wonderful dent in our freezer in the garage. But
I'm glad the freezer was the only casualty, because I had this horrible picture in my mind of you needing a whole new garage.
Right. Yes, it could have been much worse. That's
yes.
To get back to the point, the whole idea is the error was simply people putting their foot where they're used to putting their foot, right, instead of looking, right? Instead of obviously you don't look when you when you actuate the pedals, but as far as getting your kind of feet acclimated to where everything is, that's right. And it goes back down to muscle memory of this is the point in space that I'm aiming for, and the wrong, so to speak, pedal was sitting there. So I that has become more into I guess the design element of vehicles going forward is that automakers now know you have to put things where, critical things where people are going to expect to find them regardless of what manufacturer or vehicle type it is.
Is this a good segue into my controversial opinion that automatic transmissions should be banned except for in the case of disabilities, and all of these park assist crap should be banned, and the only thing that I'll allow is reverse cameras and heated seats? Because this was a whole rant yesterday, trust me, and I kind of feel sorry for the person that was in the car with me because they couldn't get out. Because I feel that all of these conveniences that make it quote unquote easier to drive a car directly contribute to the absolute number of absolute potato drivers on the roads today, and this is a global phenomena. Don't make it easier to drive a car, make it harder. If you can't control 3 pedals and a shifter, then you don't need to be behind the wheel. And this is your, grumpy middle-aged woman's rant for the weekend. You're welcome.
I was about to say, Misty, do you need to go open the window and yell at some kids to get off your lawn?
I'll go out in a little bit and yell at them, did they need to get off my street?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'm thinking of when Misty has her rant is Red Barchetta. That's the short story that preceded the actual song. Right. And I don't know if anybody else knows this, but there's this. I can't remember who wrote it.
I do,
but I know you guys do.
I've read it.
Yep, me too. And the idea is that this person in the story lives in a society where they have made cars more and more indestructible. And so he's driving around this antique thing, which is not, right? It's like classic driving. And he finds himself in a circumstance with people in indestructible cars trying to destroy him and his destructible car just because they can, just because they can't get
Yeah.
hurt. And so that was the first thing that I thought of.
I believe it
Yeah.
was called A Drive in the Country. It ran in Road and Track in 1973. I forget the author's name, but yeah, the song is pretty faithful to the story. The major difference being that in the song it's a Ferrari, and in the original story it's an MG.
Right. And yeah, it's still with the auspices of government intervention into what people want to drive. But to get back to your point, Misty, the new 7, 8-speed, 10-speed automatic transmissions, they're becoming de rigueur because as vehicles have gotten larger and heavier, you almost the former advantages of a lightweight manual transmission as far as fuel economy go no longer exist. You actually get better fuel economy with a modern automatic transmission.
I don't care.
Well,
I mean,
yes.
I literally don't. I mean, and maybe I sound grumpy, and maybe I sound like an automotive Luddite, but I honestly think that, I mean, I deep down in my cold black heart feel that making these cars point and drive, just kind of like making all these point and shoot cameras and everybody and their brother's a photographer, I believe that this is a major contribution to the absolute crap traffic conditions that you see. And this is globally, I mean, you don't want to know what I say. I mean, I am just like, I feel like I live in a constant state of road rage because these idiots, not naming any names, Germans in the third lane on the A4, why are you doing 90 kilometers an hour? I hate you. I mean, they just don't, I mean, people.
Yeah.
Traffic, move, stop. First of all, get out of my way. Second of all, did your mother drop you as an infant?
Especially in traffic, because if you have a stick shift, right? If you have a manual, you leave a gap because you don't want to be shifting first, second, right? You leave a gap, and the stupid people in Atlanta traffic will come from directly behind you and swerve in front of you because you left a gap. And if that doesn't cause road rage, I don't know what does.
Honey, that's a global thing. That's a global thing.
Okay.
But what I'm also saying is, you're saying that these new automatic transmissions are more fuel efficient, but I don't see how that can be when I have to step on the brake, because if I'm like in, the X's Mazda 6, I have to step on the brake, whereas if I'm in Claudette, I'm braking by engine. The
Sure.
first thing I do, like especially if I, am coming up on traffic or whatever, can even come up on a red light, I don't hit the brake. I immediately start downshifting, and I don't know if anyone here has ever driven through the Alps, where they say, hey, this is like a 5-degree, incline, brake by engine.
Yes.
But
that used to be more of a fuel saving thing than it is now. Back in the early days of fuel injection, the 80s and through the 90s, if you totally got off the gas in gear in a manual transmission vehicle and just let your momentum drive you forward, the fuel injectors cut off completely. The only problem with that is that if it stays in that condition long enough, the catalytic converter cools down and no longer is able to catalyze the exhaust gases once you get back on the throttle and your fuel mixture is coming through. So they changed the programming on those now so that there's always basically equivalent enough to be having your car engine idling. There's still enough fuel to go through to keep the catalytic converter lit, as they say. So it used to be a great fuel economy advantage. In modern days, not so much.
Not so much.
Well, again, I mean, yeah, fuel economy is important. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that, there's not enough for people to do while they're driving the car. So they start thinking about, I need to get my nails done, or I need to get, my, the top of my head polished.
Wait a minute. Another ball joke.
Yes.
Okay.
You've got a point.
Suzanne,
Distracted
yeah.
driving has just, it's not just cell phones, right? Distracted driving, because there's not enough to do in the car, right? I think you're exactly right on that. It has led to so much more distracted driving, especially with teenagers now who are learning to drive. I mean, think about the cars we all learned to drive on. Not to say we're all close to the same age, but we probably are. But all the cars, we learned to drive on. I had a 67 Carmen Ghia that every time I turned right, I had to reach out and re-shut the driver door because it just would fly open occasionally.
when
God.
Yeah, well, but when I started learning how to drive, now keep in mind this was like at 13 or 14. I'm from the country. I'm sorry, but my first driving lessons were not me in the driver's seat. It was me in the passenger seat, and it was in I would say probably 1980 something Subaru 4-wheel drive station wagon with the third headlight, 5-speed. And what my mom did, this was usually on back roads, but what she would do is I had control of the gears, and she would literally reach out and cover my eyes, and I had to listen for when she depressed the clutch and then do the shift.
Oh, no, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then the next lesson was learning how to drive, from the passenger side.
So we are almost out of time. Suzanne, go ahead.
I was going to say that brings up something interesting I thought about a minute ago, because like you said, Misty, we learned to drive by the sound of the car.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You didn't have a little light that said shift now, right? You learned to drive by the sound of the car. So in today's world, when people are driving Teslas and electric cars, is that impacting how people are driving differently? Because the takeoff on those things is insane. And there's no gears to tell you if what's going wrong in the car, or no engine sound, right? So I just don't know if that's impacting how people are driving today.
Yep. I don't know.
I think
All
it
right.
is.
Tim, take us to Grand Trivia Auto, and then let's wrap the episode.
Okay. All right. So our question was, the first main use for the QR code system was for the manufacturing of automobiles. In which country? Was it A, Germany, B, Italy, C, Japan, or D, the good old USA? Mickey.
Oh, man. I knew you were going to call on me first. I'm going to, for no good reason at all, I'm going to say Japan. I have no logic. I just imagine that, they had the technology. I can imagine a Japanese assembly line doing the thing. Anyway, that's my answer, Japan.
Gotcha. Ben?
Well, if it hadn't been multiple choice, I would have guessed Korea. But that's I have no real gut feeling on this one. So just because it seems the least sensible, I'm going to say Italy.
Okay. All right. Misty?
I'm going to go with Japan too, but I'm going to say it's because they tend to be innovators. They tend to implement, technology first, and QR codes just seem to be super efficient versus, whatever method Italy probably used.
Right. And Suzanne?
I'm going to have to say Japan as well, because all of the in business school, all the business cases about the automotive industry was how Japan came over here, and we had to learn from them how to be more efficient, how to be more cost effective, and because they sort of came out of the gate and kicked our butts early in the 80s there.
Right.
Lean Six Sigma. Sorry.
All right. Yeah. So yes, as most of you guessed, the answer is Japan.
No kidding. I had no rationale. Suzanne's the only one who had an actual rationale.
As opposed to in Italy, where they would just argue over who got the part next, and Germany, where Ben, what would they do in Germany before that? They would.
Oh, they'd have another beer.
Okay.
And a currywurst.
And in the USA, yes, and in the USA, if it didn't come out of the Harvard School of Business, it just got ignored.
So I was hoping we'd have more time today, but we don't, and I'm sorry. I missed you guys, and next time we'll have to better organize our episode. But that is it for this episode of The Thing About Cars. We went to a car show yesterday. Italian Car Day is coming up. I will not be there, but I hope you guys get to go. I know Ben's going to go, I think. Isn't that right, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Misty can't go. She can't
go.
But I'm hoping you can go. Ben's got the recorder, so he can do some on-site recording if you want to do that. I'll be at home recovering from a medical procedure. So that's what's going to happen with me. And in the meantime, I hope everybody out there stays safe, manage your road rage effectively, and we'll see you with another episode in about a week. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.
Y'all stay warm.